What is up, everybody? This is episode 37 and a half of Two Jersey Kids. We are a video game podcast releasing every Tuesday and Friday. The episodes come to your ear holes. I am one of your hosts, Adam Buckingham, alongside my best friend. Can't say best friend for some freaking reason. It's like I freak out every time I try to say best friend. The best stick handler in the business, Gary Seisel. How you doing today, Gary?
Excellent, sir. Doing very well. Happy to be here.
I'm glad. If you guys didn't know, you can follow us on Twitter at Two Jersey Kids. And we release episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Friday, breaking down all the news and everything that's been going on in the video game industry. We have episode 37 that just previously released last Friday, so check it out if you're a new listener. I hope you check it out after you listen to all of this. But we go into interesting stuff about all the rumors that have been going on with Assassin's Creed style, a large map, Skyrim style, and Far Cry maybe be set in a Wild West setting, but more, sounds like it's definitely set in Montana, and Mass Effect has been put on ice, so there's a lot of stuff we get into. It's a good episode, highly recommended. I know it's a biased opinion, but, you could trust us. We are here. Gary, before we get into what we're going to talk about, what have you been up to over the past, weekend? What have you been doing?
Well, unfortunately, nothing too exciting because I've been basically battling a nice cold for the past few days. So as fate would have it, I mentioned, I think, last episode, that I was going out on Friday night. And as it turned out, that night, the one night that I go out, which is like very rare nowadays, I happen to be sick, so that was
Gary caught mono, just necking it with all types of people, girls and guys left and right. He was getting it in all over the place. Am I right, Gary?
Girls and guys? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Your junk doesn't discriminate. Am I right?
This is getting a little weird.
Nope.
Getting a little weird. But anyway. No, I actually just came down with a cold, and I was feeling pretty shitty. I'm still kind of recovering from it now. My voice hasn't really fully, bounced back quite yet, but here I am. So that's basically all I've been doing.
Sounds gravelly and sexy to me, Gary.
Always, dude, always. But anyway, that's enough for me. What have you been up to, sir?
Well, what have I been up to? Well, I was lucky enough. I tried to get 2 copies of this game called The Surge that's actually releasing this week, and I've been playing it Sunday night, little tiny bit, because something large happened on Sunday that sort of took precedent. I got engaged, so that's exciting stuff.
I didn't want to say anything. I didn't know if it was still under wraps or not, but yes, sir.
I don't think anybody that listens to this podcast know, people that I am, me on social media and other aspects would, spill the beans, and then other friends would get mad at me for not telling them.
That's true.
Sorry, I told people that I felt were necessary in my life. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. Told family, told friends, important friends. But it's exciting, taking the next step. Me and Marta, I felt like it was the right time to do it. She's perfect. We're perfect together. We fight a lot. Well, not fight a lot, but we do. We have our moments, but we've gotten through it. We're stronger as a couple, so I felt like it was time. And I'm rambling now, so Gary, save me. But other than that, I've been playing The Surge, which is basically what this episode is going to be about. It's about my experiences now. I've been 10-ish hours into the game, maybe 8-ish to 10-ish hours, because there were a few codes got to me prior to the weekends, and I didn't have time to play it over the weekend, but I've been hopping in now, and Gary, it's going to be kind of like an interview, I guess, and it's not really, it's not like you're going to interview me, it's just going to be the same bullshit that we normally do. So, what are your thoughts? What do you have for me? Throw them my way!
All right, so I wanted to kind of organize this somewhat so we aren't completely kind of just winging it like we usually do. So I guess
that's my style.
Well, absolutely. I don't know. I've always been the guy to have to try to organize things in a way. I don't know. It's just the way I roll. But anyway, I just wanted to ask you basically, first and foremost, for people that aren't familiar with the game, what is Surge? I guess explain it in your words, maybe explain some things about it.
So yeah, this is completely. I don't know what questions you're going to actually be asking, but I mean, this seems like a legitimate, obvious early question to ask. Actually, I lied. You asked me this beforehand, but I didn't actually answer you, so I'm answering it now. So Serge, if you didn't know, there's a it's kind of like becoming a genre in of itself, like the Souls style gameplay. It seems like the Dark Souls, Demon Souls has now created their own style, whether it comes now to Bloodborne being released, and then Deck 13, the developer behind this game, previously created Lords of the Fallen, which is kind of like a fantasy setting, which is kind of like Dark Souls aspect, but more high fantasy, I guess you could say, where Dark Souls was more just seems like dark, creepy fantasy that took place. But yeah, you see offshoots like Neo. But now this is Deck 13, another IP, I guess, in their arsenal now. They're like the Souls-style franchise, where it's more of a sci-fi setting, where you basically are starting off in the game. You're kind of like a handicapped person. You're going to this corporation that's like, you apply for, I guess, helping, or you I don't know exactly what you just click apply. I'm not sure what the whole deal with that. You're in a wheelchair. You get hooked up. It had a creepy scene where it's like, the stereotypical not getting put under type deal, where the guy's still awake while he has like things being drilled into him as like he's getting like built up, and then something crazy happens. Like he wakes up and He has like a robot is like dragging him, and it's kind of obtuse, the storytelling. There's obviously something wrong going on with like the hardwaring. I guess that's basically what I've come to understand, that there's got to be some issue going on with like the neural link they hook you up to. So the whole purpose is, right now I'm trying to find and meet this person who hopefully will explain more of what's going on. But yeah, when you're coming into this game, it's basically, if you played a Souls game, you kind of understand what's going on. You have like these wide swath kind of levels, but this is more sci-fi based, so it's a lot of machinery, a lot of pipes. Where I'm at right now, it's kind of like a factory, but it's a lot of the way the level is designed is that's why I've always loved this game, because you can explore and find new ways to like have shortcuts to certain areas, so you finally get all the way to the portion where you can finally shortcut it so you can get back quickly. It's always a nice, little happiness that happens when that happens. But yeah, what am I saying? It's sci-fi, Souls-style gameplay. I mean, what more can I say? I've defeated a boss. I'm probably getting close to my next one. But that is basically a long explanation of what this game is. Just think Souls, sci-fi. I can go more into detail, but it depends on what Gary wants from me.
Yeah. So basically, I like that. I like that description. It's very, very thorough. But anyway, I basically divided it into 5 categories, kind of like I did with the Flame and the Flood review in the past, which, by the way, you can still listen to if you want. Just choose it from the episode list.
You can also go to TwoJerseyKids.com. It's there, too.
Damn right. So I have 5 categories for you. Basically, gameplay, graphics, sound / atmosphere / music. I guess you could throw that in there. Story, and also replay value. That one we can get. I guess we'll talk about that at the end. But I guess first up, what do you think of the gameplay so far? Is it simple, straightforward, or is there more is it more complex with kind of like a learning curve to it?
Gameplay. I like how they sort of tweaked it so it's not completely the same thing as you've seen in past games, whether it's Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Neo now, where actually when you're targeting people, it kind of has a Monster Hunter type vibe where you can target certain limbs, and if you hit them enough, I know we saw in like the reveal trailer, I remember we were talking about it, Gary, is like you can do the executions, but the whole purpose of the executions is that there's better chance of you actually gaining like armor specifically from that execution. So like if you chop off a right leg, you may be able to get that armor from that right leg.
Yeah, cool.
When you highlight where you're locked on, you can change from like their head to their body to their right and left arm to the right and left leg, and it sort of indicates whether or not it's being guarded by like they have some sort of armor. If it's like blue, it's basically unguarded, so you can hit them more, stun them. What I've noticed is I mean, this game, obviously, it's a Souls-style game. I feel like it's a very solid game, that's for sure. And I think at the end, I'll sort of rank the Souls games, like, in my cacophony of what I can think of what I think is the best Souls genre. I'll put that at the end of how this stands up to all of them. But I think gameplay-wise, it doesn't feel, coming off of me playing Neo, it really doesn't feel as tight as those games can be, whether it's dodging or moving out of the way. It doesn't feel quite as rewarding, I guess. It doesn't feel quite as fluid. I feel like I keep getting, like, I try to dodge, but it just doesn't feel like you're dodging or moving out of the way. Sometimes it feels like you dodge into an attack, which makes kind of weird sense because I dodge around them, but I still get hit. There's some wonkiness to it. And it's I don't know how to exactly describe it as such, so that it's just not as fluid as I want from like a Souls-style game. It's not what I got from Neo or Bloodborne or the Souls franchise in general. It doesn't feel as smooth, but still, it's not. I'm not saying that it's like difficult to play. It's like unplayable. It's still playable. It's just not nearly as polished, I guess you could say, as those games.
I was exactly the word I was going to use there. But yeah. So that's. I mean, would you say the gameplay? Do you enjoy the gameplay overall?
Yeah, I mean, I like the reward aspect to it. It's like any Souls game. I really, it's rewarding going out right now anyway, collecting loot, and I guess the whole purpose is that there's, it's kind of, if you're a Souls fan, or a Bloodborne fan, or, you know what, like, bonfires are, which is, like, the main checkpoint, I guess, in a level where you can cash in your souls. This is like Medical Bay, where you cash in your like tech scraps that you gain from defeating enemies. You can cash them in. See, the difference between the Lords of the Fallen and the Surge, created by Deck 13, is that actually when you go to the Med Bay, the enemies do reset, but you're able to actually bank your tech scraps or whatever you did get in Lords of the Fallen. So they were there for the future. So after you upgrade yourself, you can then store the remaining it over, so you don't risk losing them like you do sometimes in the Souls franchise. When you finally upgrade your character, you get up to, you have like, say, 5,000 souls left. You still have to carry them, and you could possibly lose them. Here's the different thing when it comes to the Surge is that when it comes to upgrading your character, it's not like Souls. So when you go into the med bay and you cash in your scraps to upgrade a core level, the whole purpose of the core levels is actually it affects more of what you're wearing on your body. So you have like implants, which can affect like the amount of stamina you have, the amount of actually like injectables, which is like health packs you can carry around, which is kind of interesting that you can only carry around 3, I guess, health packs that you can go throughout the level, and when you go back to the med bay, they go back up to 3. That's sort of an implant that you put in yourself. But then there's also, you utilize this thing called energy, which you build up in combat, which you can use for the executions, or there's certain injectables, like you can use it to then gain health. So if you reach a certain point on the bar, you can actually use it and gain health, which I've done on boss battles a lot, which have been helpful, because you can't really execute them, but you can use it to gain back health, which is very helpful. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, the whole purpose of leveling up, your level corresponds to the amount of power consumption the tech or whatever you're using on your body or the implants use up, so you can't go over it. So every thing that you have on your body, so your right arm, whatever your equipped armor gives you a power consumption level. So it's say 2 and it goes up 2. So it gives you when you go to the med bay, it shows you have 27 if you're level 30 and you have 27 worth of power consumption. You said it's 27 out of 30 total. very straightforward. So most of the leveling up is not really through, as you know, in the Souls franchise, where you level up stamina, strength, or dexterity, or whatever it is, or like the Neo, where you level up basically like the Souls franchise, and you gain like stats, like because you have a long, convoluted amount of stats that sometimes you don't know what everything means. Where this is just straightforward, you have the certain amount of power consumption. This helps you. You can hot swap implants, certain ones anyway. So yeah, that's basically, I guess, the gameplay behind it. I think Souls franchise, think sci-fi. Gameplay still not as fluid as the Souls franchise, but I feel like the level design that they had in the game was still pretty solid, I think.
Cool, groovy.
Cool.
All right. All right. So this is, I guess this depends on the person, but what do you think of the graphics in the game? I mean, is there any distinct art style? And does it remind you of other games? I know you were talking about Souls. Does it kind of remind you of that? Or is it kind of just like the generic art style that you see in like a lot of, I don't know, action games?
I would say really it doesn't look as good, I guess you could say, as... for me personally, it doesn't look as good as Bloodborne or Souls or Neo or Lords of the Fallen for that matter, and I'm not sure if it's just because that Lords of the Fallen and Souls and Bloodborne were set in like an open, like you could see out farther, you could see things in the distance, you could see trees or different Victorian buildings or large castles, where this is, right now I'm like in a factory, so I'm not really looking far or looking out and seeing like a beautiful landscape or anything. I'm just in like a generic machine-filled factory, so it doesn't really invoke that awe-inspiringness that Bloodborne and the Souls franchise and Neo and Lords of the Fallen have invoked. Well, Neo not so much. I don't remember looking out and saying, "Oh man, that's beautiful." But you know what I mean. I know you said you had. It seemed like you had a follow-up or something, Gary.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Like, does it look? With that said, does it look like the game's like polished and it's had enough time to, I guess, for them to really, like nail that down, or at least nail down the graphics aspect?
It definitely looks like it definitely looks nice when you're in the levels. I did notice when at the start, when you're sitting on like you're basically. It kind of reminded me of the free-to-play version of this, or not version of this, called Let It Die. I remember talking about it a while ago. But you're coming in on like a train. Coming into like the station for where the company is located, and I like looked up, and all the buildings, like they were supposed to be. I'm guessing they wanted to be like look nice, but it didn't render properly. And I'm not sure if it was because the way it's set up, you only have to install like 2 gigabytes to get into the game, which is kind of strange. I guess it like starts installing in the background for later levels. But it just didn't seem like the buildings were completely rendered, which threw off the look of it. But once you get in level, it seems more polished. It's not there's not too much color, I guess you could say. I mean, there is color with the different pipes, but it doesn't just, it doesn't, I don't think, utilize the color spectrum as much when you have like a fantasy setting as like the Souls franchise, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think it does its job when you're in the level. I think it looks nice. I think it does what it's supposed to do. It's nothing spectacular, but it's nothing like awful.
Does its job. All right. So now this kind of, I guess, feeds into it a little bit too. In terms of like the sound and I guess the atmosphere of the game, do you feel like the sounds and stuff, like, are they? This is kind of a hard question to ask, I guess, but do you think that the sounds and stuff like that, the musical score in the game, like what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it adds to the atmosphere of the game, or do you think that they've done a good job creating an atmosphere in the game that, I guess adds to it or adds to the overall experience?
So far, here's the thing. For me personally, I've never really gotten to. It's certain games. It draws my attention when it comes to sound. A lot of games I don't focus as much on it. I do notice that when you're fighting like larger machines, sometimes I notice like the score picks up and it feels more climatic, and when you're fighting a boss, it obviously picks up. But it's nothing noticeable on my end, but that could just be me because I don't notice this as much as some people do. Some people really enjoy the music in the game. It adds more atmospheric to it. But yeah, I can't comment too much on that, honestly, just because me personally as a gamer, it's not something I focus on, but that's just me. Other people, I'm sorry if you do focus on that, but I don't want to just start, spewing something, but give you a false idea of what the game is when it comes to the score or anything, if that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, like, not all games are really that type of game either, Like, I remember... Yeah. When I did The Flame and the Flood, for example, I mean, that game relied heavily on the musical score in that game as well. I mean, I thought the music in that game was fantastic, and it added to the experience, and it was noticeable in that way. So some games just aren't like that, I feel like. So it's nothing really against you personally.
I think it definitely the score I've noticed I did notice it in Bloodborne. I did notice in Souls because I felt like it was more. It felt right to have like a more fantastical like score, I guess, in the game going through. Like when you're fighting certain bosses, you have, when you're fighting the final hunter in Bloodborne, there's it just feels very climatic with the score that's playing. And same with Neo. I remember that's throughout all this. It seems like I'm going to be comparing it to all the Souls franchise because I mean. This is basically its own genre now, but there's not too many games, so it's easy enough to compare them to each other. Right now, I have not noticed it as much. Maybe it's just because it sounds more like just generic machinery, so it doesn't really register with me as like, oh wow, like listen to that sound, it makes me immersed. I mean that's basically all I can really say about that. So the sound,
All right, fair enough. Now I know you basically elaborated on this before and pretty thoroughly, but what are your thoughts on the story? Is it kind of like a simple like shoot 'em up type of story, or is it more of like a complex like RPG-esque type of plot going on?
When it comes to these type of games, it always seems like they like to stick to the obtuse route, but I have no Deck 13. It seemed like from Lords of the Fallen, from what I've played, it seemed like they tried to actually put in more of a conducive story to understand. And it seems like they're trying to do that with the Surge, where it's more you kind of understand where you're going, whereas Bloodborne and the Souls franchise, it's kind of very obtuse of what's happening in the game. You have to kind of dig into the lore later on and understand what your character is relative to the story in itself. Whereas this is very straightforward. Right now, the whole purpose of the whole thing you're trying to accomplish is actually get to this. It seems like an engineer or researcher. Maybe she can help you figure out more of what's going on. It seems like there's something happened with this company that you're working for, or we're trying to work for, Creo. Something went wrong with like the uplink or neural link that this rigs connects to, and it seems like people are going crazy that route. But again, I'm not too far in the story, so who knows if there's be plot twists. But it's like a Souls franchise. You don't know exactly. It's not like you have cinematics all the time. Like you don't have cinematics to give you different plot points. It's more just talking to characters, or talking to like do quick brief dialogue conversations or little things that are going on in the world, I guess you could say, that hint more towards of what's happening rather than the classic cinematic point towards exactly what is happening or what is going on in the story, if that makes sense to you, Gary.
Yeah, definitely. And actually kind of playing into the story, with that said, this is the last thing, I guess, on the list that I have. Do you think with this type of story and plot, given your time with the game, do you think it really has much of a replay value after you actually beat it? I know this is kind of a tough question to ask because you haven't beaten the game yet and you really don't. Yeah. You haven't seen the full thing. But do you think a game like this would have much of a replay value to it?
Yeah, this is really early on. And I am not positive that it does have like the complete replayability of it. Mind you, I haven't got too far as like some of the reviewers that have been playing it. I'm like 10 hours in. Some people have been saying that it does plateau after a while of collecting loot and collecting your gear. That it sort of slows down when you get higher levels or higher or longer into the game. So I could see how that doesn't seem like replayability. There's not another aspect to the game where it seems like it could add that. Where Bloodborne had like kind of different. It had like random dungeons, I guess you could go into that weren't part of the story in itself, and still collect like soul, or it was blood. Was it blood? Yeah, I think it was blood. That makes sense. Where you could level up that route, and I think you go through more difficult trials in that, which was set like up in your kind of hub world, I guess you could say. I forget what that place was called. It's kind of bugging me now. But yeah. The Surge doesn't seem like it has that. It seems like it's going to be, when you finish the game, there may be New Game Plus, but I'm not sure if that is going to offer too much. Maybe the replayability, it's not really replayability, is if they add extra DLC, which is adding on maps and new story content, I guess you could say, that you see in all like the Souls franchises.
All right, solid. So, I guess overall, what's your overall thought on the game? I mean, if you had to give it like a in progress sort of rating, how are you faring with everything?
I hate the stupid like give ratings. I don't like giving numbers to these.
Okay, so would you recommend right now, knowing what you know, would you recommend this to people?
Right now, when playing this game, I feel like it's definitely, especially because there's not too much out right now, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you can spend your time during the summer lull, which is bound to happen with video games, that not too much will be coming out. But yeah, if you haven't played, if you are looking for like a like getting back into like the Souls franchise, like if you're kind of want that itch again, I feel like this will definitely scratch your itch. It won't feel, I'm prefacing this now, it won't feel as satisfying as the Souls franchise or Bloodborne, and it won't flow or be as like move as well as those games, not as polished mechanically, I guess you could say, when it comes to the combat in of itself. Well, especially when it comes to the dodging thing is it kind of annoys me because it just doesn't seem like it's quite there. It's close, but it doesn't seem like it's quite there. It always seems like there's something. It seems like every time I click it, it's like a second off of when I want it to occur. It just doesn't seem like it's as quick and responsive, I guess, that I want it to be. I guess now it's kind of, I would definitely recommend it. However, I would rate it, if you haven't played Neo or this one, I would definitely say play Neo first, but if the sci-fi aspect interests you more, then I guess play this one. I would still recommend Neo over this, but I do like sci-fi, but yeah, still Neo. So in the terms of like Souls franchise, it's kind of, for me personally, I love Bloodborne the most, and then you have Dark Souls 3, 1, 2, Neo. It's so hard to compare Neo to all of them, and like these games kind of, they're slightly different, because like I feel like Bloodborne, the Dark Souls franchise, Neo are like top tier when it comes to the style genre, and this is like the second tier, I guess. It's not quite as great as those games, but it's definitely a solid game. It's definitely a pretty good game. I would say somewhat great, but just not nearly as fantastic as those games are, with how great From Software delivers on those games. But I think Deck 13, another game under their belt, this style game under the belt, I think they'll continue getting better. And I think the Surge is definitely a step up from Lords of the Fallen, in my opinion. And I liked it. So I'm going to continue playing it, obviously. Because I've been liking it. So, yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, that concludes my interview with Adam Buckingham. But yeah,
this is so strange that you're interviewing me. It's really strange.
It does feel weird, but it works because we're us. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
That's just the way it is. You want me to take us out?
Yeah, that's all I got for you. That's all I got for you today.
All right, I'll rein it all in because I did all the work on this episode. But that's just the way it is. Just kidding. But yeah, if you stuck with us this whole time, I really greatly appreciate it. To all you new listeners and continued listeners, we seriously love you so much. If you tweet us at 2 Jersey Kids, we promise we will interact with you. We will respond, so don't be afraid to talk to us. Don't be afraid to tweet us. We will get back to you. You can direct message us if you want to ask questions or just talk and shoot the shit about video games or whatever. We'll answer you. We may be a little slower when it comes to answers sometimes during the week because sometimes we're working, so it sort of conflicts with that. So sometimes work kind of takes precedent over this. But maybe in the future, when we get larger, because of all you beautiful people out there, this will be our full-time gig. We can only dream. It'll happen, though. We're going to take over the world. I'm making a bold prediction now. You know how it's like games and hobbies? There's a podcast when it does categories in iTunes, games and hobbies. Car talk is always number one. Always.
We're going to take him. We're going to dethrone him.
It's never been moved, and I want to go for it. I know it is not realistic at all right now with the fact that we only get like 200 and some downloads or listeners per episode, which is fantastic on our route, but I'm making it now. So if we ever do surpass them, you can come back to this episode and I called it. I called my shot like
Genius.
Babe Ruth, and I fucking delivered. I'll look like Nostradamus, motherfuckers. I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, I'm about to, Gary, you have anything to say before we say bye?
Basically, kind of summed up everything I wanted to say. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. It's been awesome. I'll see you guys again on our Friday episode. Peace out, everybody.
Yep. Again, thank you so much for listening. Follow us at 2 Jersey Kids. You can go to our website, 2jerseykids.com, where Gary wrote up something about the last half episode. He got into, why there should be more Star Wars games, shockingly enough, as his first blog post. But yeah, we really appreciate it. If you do have the time, if you're listening on an Apple device, if you can go to iTunes and rate us, it would be really helpful. Give us feedback, give us what you like or dislike about the show and what we can improve on. We'd be happy to try to improve ourselves. And yeah, other than that, you can rate us or just keep listening to us other podcast service apps out there. We're available everywhere. SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, Overcast, Google Play, a lot of places. So yeah, Gary, say bye.
Adios.
All right, guys, keep playing those games. We'll see you on Friday for all the news that's been going on this past week. Who knows? Will there be a lot? Will there be nothing? Who knows? Me and Gary will still be there. Bye.